Hi and welcome to Choose Agape. I want to talk today about purpose. I think one of the biggest problems that we face in our culture is this loss of the idea of truth, that there's objective truth, everything's my truth and not the truth. And I think that we need to recapture the idea that truth exists if we're to understand purpose, if we're to understand the purpose of our lives. And the idea of purpose is linked to a meaningful life. You might say that a life without purpose, a purposeless life, might also be described as a meaningless life. So this idea of purpose being linked to meaning, and purpose also being linked to what is real, what is true. So what is truth? That perennial question that Pilate asks Christ before his crucifixion. Well, sometimes things are so simple that we miss what is true. We have a tendency to complexify, to overcomplicate, and miss what's right in front of us. When I conform my mind to what is real, that is truth. If I were to tell you that this pen is a bicycle, am I speaking the truth? No, it's a lie. What if I really wanted it to be a bicycle? What if I believed really hard that it is a bicycle? Is it? No, it's still going to be a pen. Whenever we engage in dialogue, the purpose is to arrive at truth, or should be to arrive at truth. Otherwise, you just share your feelings and I share mine. And to be honest with you, why should either of us care? So this idea of truth being conforming my mind to what is real. So what makes a thing real? A pen, let's say, a kettle, a toaster. Well, each of these things began in the mind of man to achieve some aim, to achieve some purpose. In the case of the kettle, to boil water. In the case of a toaster, to turn bread hot and crispy. In the case of a pen, to write things down. But just having the idea doesn't mean that the finished product will just pop into existence. It needs a plan, a form to take shape. Think of a house. You might have a vision of your ideal house in your mind. Just having the idea doesn't mean you can live in it. First thing you need to do is to get that idea down into some kind of plan, to get it into some kind of form. And you might have an architect draw up a plan for your house. And so you're getting there. You've now got an idea, you've got a plan, it's taking shape. You still can't live in it. What you need next is you need material. You need the stuff that it's going to be made of, the wood, the bricks, the glass, metal. So now you're closer to the house existing. You are closer to achieving that idea that you had of your perfect house, but you still can't live in it. You've got your idea, you've got your plan, you've even got your bricks and your wood, your metal, but you can't live in it. You can't live in it until the builders do the work of conforming the material, the bricks and the wood and the glass, to the plan that you have. Otherwise, it's just a yard full of materials. So only when the craftsmen assemble the material in line with that form, that plan, can the final end be achieved, the final purpose, which is you living in the house. You had this idea of this house you wanted to live in. And so the final purpose, the final end is only achieved when that house is built. And so that needs form, it needs material. And then finally, it then exists and you live in it. And so it's achieved its final end. Now, the nature of a thing is related to its purpose. So it's in the nature of a kettle to boil water because that is its purpose. You wouldn't say it's in the nature of a toaster to boil water, just like you wouldn't say it's in the nature of a kettle to toast bread. The inventor of such things sets the limits, as it were, through a plan or a form which defines what that thing is. Real things have natures, and natures set limits. I suppose the nature could be described as the whatness of a thing, what it is as opposed to some other thing. So what this pen is as opposed to what this phone is. So it's a whatness. We look at complex human inventions, a TV, a phone, a car, and marvel at the creative genius that came up with them. Well, man is far more complex. Even a single cell is far more complex than any man-made object, and so necessarily requires something that transcends man for its creation. Well, we call this God. This idea of man-made things having forms, being made of stuff, and existing because of the creator is true also of natural things. Now, I know there are those who would say that man, indeed the whole universe, is the result of chance, but I reject something so mathematically improbable that in any other situation we would call it impossible. I don't have the faith of atheists in that regard. I like the tale that Peter Crave told of two scientists who stood watching the first moon rocket take off. One of them was a theist and the other an atheist. And the believer said, "Isn't it wonderful that our rocket is going to hit the moon by chance?" The unbeliever objected, "What do you mean by chance? We put millions of man-hours of design into that rocket." Well, there's more design in the universe than there is in a rocket. And besides, if our brain computer, as it were, has no cosmic intelligence behind the heredity and environment that program it, then why would we trust it at all? Even for talking about brains, why would we trust it? So anyway, it's assumed by me that natural things, like man-made things, conform to this same pattern. They too are the result of a creative mind. They begin in the divine mind, and the divine mind gives them form, natures, a way of distinguishing one thing from another, a mountain from the sea, a cat from a spider, a human from a dog, and a male from a female. And no one knows better the purpose of something than the one who created it. So natures and purposes are related to one another. The purpose of a chair is not to be a refreshing drink because it doesn't have that nature. We may construct man-made things, but in the natural order, we don't construct the nature of things and we don't construct the purpose of things. Even in the world of artificial objects, I don't decide that it's the purpose of my toaster to mow the lawn. I mean, I am free to try and use it in that way, but there will come a point when I have to face the reality that such a design cannot achieve this end because it was not designed for this purpose. In the natural order, I don't decide that it's, for example, in the nature of an orange to prevent scurvy. It just is. I'm free to try and treat scurvy using, say, my hole punch, however that might look, but however much I try, alleviation of scurvy is not in the nature of a hole punch. The limits of its nature mean that it cannot achieve that purpose. But treatment of scurvy is in the nature of an orange. It is in the nature of an orange whether I believe it is or not, whether I want it to be or not, whether I wish it was or not, because it's in the thing itself. Just as the mind of man gives form and purpose to a thing, so the divine mind gives us, his created beings, form and purpose. The difference between man-made objects and God-made nature is that with mankind, reality is both given, God gives us our nature, and received. So it's relational. The kind of creature we are, the nature we have, the form we are given entails an ability to freely choose relationship with our Creator. We alone are made in the image of God. It's not in the nature of the human person to be a tool, a machine. We don't construct the nature of man or the purpose of man. We are not the creator of man. When man creates artificial objects, then I suppose it's up to man to decide their value. So the value of my pen, for example, is linked to its ability to achieve a given purpose. So I want my pen to be able to write, which is in line with its nature. That's what it's designed for. But when it runs out of ink and stops working, it no longer has value to me. And no one would think it morally wrong for me to discard my pen when it stops working. Because man didn't create man, didn't give form to man, didn't set the limits of man's nature, man cannot decide the value of the human person. God alone can. And we're reliably informed that the human person has infinite value in the eyes of God. My value doesn't and shouldn't be dependent on what use I am to you, in the way that the value of my pen or my toaster or my kettle is dependent on that instrumental value. My value as a human person shouldn't depend on that. This is why we instinctively know that slavery, human trafficking, rape are so morally repugnant. And what is the human person anyway? Well, it's the totality of me, body and soul. The reason rape is so morally repugnant is because I am my body. My body's not a tool or an object of consumption like a steak or a beer. It's a contradiction to say, I honour the human person whilst treating the human body as separable from the human person. So what is in the nature of the human person? In what way is a human person different from other things, be inanimate objects or other creatures? Well, being made in the image of God, it's in the nature of the human person to participate in the divine nature, and the divine nature is love. As Carol Wojtyła, who went on to become Pope John Paul II, wrote, the human person is a good towards which the only proper and adequate attitude is love. As Catholics, we believe that God created us for relationship with him, created us alone as the pinnacle of his creation in his own image. And so we need to look at what is distinct about human beings. That's a starting point. Look at what distinguishes us from other things, what is distinct about the human person, if we are to then go on and understand the particular purpose of our existence. We have a different purpose to other creatures and a different purpose to our household tools, because ultimately we have a different and unique nature, made as we alone are in the image of our Creator. So if our purpose is to be in relationship with our Creator, it begs the question, what does that look like? Thanks for listening today, and I hope you will tune in again.